Thank you very much for joining us on this Friday hangout with myself on Ginger Media TV as we dive into one of the most pressing and contentious issues in our Igbo today. It is no news that in the past couple of days, the Nigerian media space has been awash with the book written by the former head of state of Nigeria, General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. As as a reaction to that, a faction of Ohanaeze Igbo issued a statement and demanded for a 10 trillion restitution to be paid to Igbo. The question that is in the lips of many is this demand a legitimate call to right historical injustice, or is it an opportunistic move exploiting past tragedies? With the weight of history behind this claim and the far-reaching implication for justice, reparations, and economic equity, the conversation promises to be enlightening and thought-provoking. To break down these complexities of these demand, we have an excellent panel of experts. I have with me here Professor Chidi Osuagu, historian and cultural scholar. Professor, you're welcome, sir.
Good evening.
Scientist and analyst. Professor, you're welcome. Professor Basigu, are you there? Oh, I think he's gone out. Okay. Nonetheless, we would continue. I think he will join us shortly. I also have here with me Elder Deli Ajufo. Many of you know him as a veteran public affairs analyst and commentator. Elder Obueshi, Ekenemgi.
Thank you.
Our discussion will explore the historical context, political undertone, and economic visibility of the demand, as well as the potential impact on Igbo's socio-political landscape. As I said, let me start first by putting the question to my panelists. Before we dive into the 10 trillion that was demanded by a faction of Ohanaeze, let us actually look at the book, just quickly, written by General General Badamasi Babangida. Professor Suhagu, briefly, by way of introduction, having heard the hula baloo about the whole thing written in that book, and the notion that everybody appears to be celebrating now, that this school is not, the January 1966 school is not an Igbo school, which many of us already knew because countless literatures there showcasing that is not the case. But hey, for some reason, Nigerians decided to believe whatever they wanted to believe. Bearing in mind that, what is your take now? Do you think that, the hula baloo that we now experience or we've been hearing, does that make any sense to you? Or are you, as someone who actually experienced that war, knowing the real truth of what happened in that time, do you think those who are jubilating, jumping up and down, that this has finally been led to rest? Do you see any merit in that?
Well, I think history is a force of its own, and it's not just a mere chronicle of things that have happened, but narratives of what happened as perceived by different observers. And when seen from different eyes, it is possible to synthesize a trend, a tendency that best approximates the truth. And in this case, from the facts he presented, General Babangida presented his perception of the truth. But the key thing is to look at the facts he presented, because truth has different way of being perceived by different cultures. In fact, among the Igbo, we talk of Igbo truth, which is what really happened. But many other cultures don't see truth that way. They see truth as interest, what benefits me. Because of it, we have to have an open mind to see how different people see this truth. But I want to observe that what General Babangida said is important, because he was a key participant in the process. He was in the army in 1966, experienced the first coup, was part of the second coup, was part of the Civil War, and he recorded his experiences and listed dates and so on. So people have to look at those basic facts before expressing an opinion. But I want to also point out that what Babangida had said in his book is the subject of a whole book called Nzogwu, written by General Obasanjo, President Obasanjo, in which he had explained what has happened. That, for instance, you see Babangida, his book, expression of Nzogwu as a regular northern guy. And that when Nzogwu died, he was given a military honor burial. That is very, 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 very important. Very, 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 very important. That could have told all this argument all along. If people take note that when Nzogwu died in the northern front, Nsukka front, populated at that time by the 1st Division of the Nigerian Army, made up of core northerners, and they took his corpse and gave him an honorable military burial. They didn't bury him as an enemy. It is very, very, very important. People ignore that fact all along. But if they took note of that fact, that was given military honor burial by those who would otherwise be seen as his enemy at that time, all this argument will not have risen. But in any case, I want us to know that the idea of the January 1966 coup being an Igbo coup was articulated by Britain and broadcast by BBC. It is very important to take note of it. It is further important to take note that Britain had planned a war to take place by or before 1958 against the eastern region of Nigeria. And that the governor in the east at that time, Robert Bowden, pressed to stop that. What they did, note, by 1966, from 58, that's 8 years, very few years. What they did was they took the event of January 1966 as pretext to activate a war they had planned against the Igbo and against Eastern Nigeria. In fact, when I say against Eastern Nigeria, that against the Igbo and the Bibio, who from the slave era, they had marked out as unmanageably rebellious. Why would they plan that war? They planned the war because by 1929, the women in the East had uprisen and disrupted their whole program of indirect rule, using artificial warrant chiefs. From 29 to 49, when the Eva Valley massacre over coal at Enugu, which Britain was cutting away to use to rehabilitate Britain after the World War II, was my 20 years. Again, it was the Igbo that had arisen at Enugu, and they massacred the coal miners, and it led to all kinds of confusion, and then they plotted to end it. But we still need to go further behind and find the role of Igbo slaves in the American Civil War, in which Britain and France supported the losing party of Confederates. After which they set up the Hausa Constabulary, which became the Nigerian Security Services as we know them, and specifically excluded the recruitment of Southerners in order to avoid recruiting rebellious people. Even before then, we have to go back to Haiti, the Haitian Revolution, which is the greatest revolution in all of human history, in which a slave population defeated all the world powers at that time, Spain, British Empire, Napoleonic France, and proclaimed their independence. And this phenomenon was led by the Igbo. The slaves had analyzed all the 27 ethnic nations. Those from Nigeria, the Nago were there. Yoruba is a new name. The Yoruba, the Nago, they were there. The Fula were there. The Hausa were there. But identified the Igbo as the model to follow and win freedom, and they did. And Napoleon marked out that the regions had to be wiped from the earth to stop the black race from marching on ever on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
But the Igbo led the black race to defeat Napoleon and abort that ambition of the European imperialists and slavers. So we need to go back and understand this thing and come forward to Nigeria. Why did Lugard, after analyzing Nigerian ethnic groups, particularly the Hausa, Fulani, the Igbo, Yoruba, point out that these other people were neither here nor there, but that Igbo should be watched because they wouldn't be in support of their plunder of the black race. Okay. So this is, I want us to keep this in perspective before we make it a Nigerian debate, an Igbo debate, Yoruba debate, Hausa debate. No. Okay. The war was planned by the British. The idea of Igbo coup was articulated by the British, and every other thing is interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Very clear in context that the war of that happened in Nigeria, obviously the coup itself, the January 1966 coup, it's what one may not entirely place its hand as to the involvement of the Britain at that point. Obviously, the fallout is what is very clear. And, one thing that you said that is very, very intriguing is many people tend to forget that Nzogu was actually buried with a full military parade. So in other words, he was buried a nationalist, so to say. So, and if one begins to put that into context, one now then, asks this question. Professor Obasigwe, I'm coming to you with this now. If you can unmute, please. If one puts that into context, one will now begin to wonder if Nzogu was buried, with full military honor, almost like a national hero. I mean, I would say that, that's what it means, because the military guys are nationalists. If Nzogu had done that, if the Nigerian state had done that to Nzogu, Obasigwe, my question then is, at what point do you think the whole thing basically changed Because, for instance, there was a song, Ewu Nebakwa, that suddenly surfaced recently. People say, oh, this song was used by the Igbos to mock the Northerners. But on a closer look, I made a tweet. Actually, that song was released in 1964, before the coup. That song was sung, was a song by someone who was not Igbo, by from Kalabali. So if you just oppose all this, the question that is bugging the minds of everyone is, why do you think that this narrative was pushed in order that things eventually the center couldn't hold? Professor Pasigo, are you there?
Are you hearing me, sir?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll be speaking while managing my electricity. First of all, I'll go direct to the point. And I thank the TV Ohanaeze for all your efforts. I also thank you for the elucidations. The point I'm going directly to is the 10 trillion naira request by whoever, so that we don't forget the main object of this Friday retreat or so. Nobody authorized anyone to seek 10 trillion naira as restitution or compensation for the Igbo. And nobody is authorized to make such demand on other than what the Igbo had said in the 2014 National Conference, in the 1990s Abacha Conference, in the Oputa panel. The Igbo, the present Nigeria, is developed by the Igbo nation. The resources that develop the Nigerian nation, the trillions and Tugri, built Sokoto, built Lagos, built everywhere. The trillions came from Igbo land, and those adjacent to Igbo land, from the east entirely. And these trillions were taken out by force without any effort to also build any part of Igbo land. And how can an Igbo person go and demand 10 trillion naira for the sake of restitution when we are now hearing that 16 to 20 trillion naira is just being invested in building a road? And an Igbo person goes to demand 10 trillion naira. So that is an insult to the sensibility of the Igbo nation. Nobody should make such a demand. Number two, Babangida's book ought to answer the title, A Journey in Disservice. Disservice. Because there is nothing he wrote there that has not been known already. There is not, and it was a great disappointment. The people who joined him in that hall to witness the launching of a book that never said anything new, to witness the launching of a book by a man that destroyed the Naira, that destroyed many lives, that was held, the first properly held election that was annulled by him, that extricated himself, so he thought, from responsibility for all these terrible actions, and that laid the foundations for the tragedy that is Nigeria today. And everybody was there, hailing him and donating money. In addition to all the loot that he acquired and went away, oil windfalls and so on. So this was an affront on the people of Nigeria. Maradona has been played again to the people of Nigeria. Then let me cut it there and come to the January 15 coup d'etat. Because the Igbo nation, the Nigerian nation, the whole world need to know this. In fact, people have already known it. If that coup was not an Igbo coup, what was Babangida waiting for? Why didn't he say so when he was head of state and government? If that was not an Igbo coup, so why all these military governments have not said so before? They knew it was not an Igbo coup. It could not have been an Igbo coup d'etat when the Igbo were killed inside it, when it was the Igbo that aborted it, when most Igbo people never even knew about it. The people that are insisting that it was an Igbo coup have not told us which Igbo met to design and sanction a coup d'etat. They have not told us that. That coup d'etat, a coup d'etat was already foreseen in the 1960s. Even Ojukwu suggested a coup d'etat to go on, and Banjo, that they should take over the government. When, after Balewa made a treaty with Britain for an Anglo-Nigerian treaty, that was antithetical to Nigerian independence. When Awolowo was jailed, and people were not liking it, the whole nation was in tumult. Killings in Western Nigeria, mini genocide in the Middle Belt, Nigeria was in disarray. Rumors of coup d'etat had already been in the University of Ibadan. People knew that something like a coup d'etat was going to take place, but nobody knew exactly who was going to be behind it. Nnamdi Azikiwe knew, Alewa knew, Akintola knew, Okpara knew, Ahmadu Bello knew. The students at University of Ibadan knew. The radical intelligence in Nigeria knew that there was going to be a coup d'etat, but nobody knew who exactly was going to take over the government. Hiroshi knew. There's no doubt that people knew, but the actual coup that took place, they didn't know. Because Ahmadu Bello himself and Akintola were trying to enact a coup d'etat on January 17th to wallop the West and the East and Nigeria. And Nzogu, who was in the intelligence service, monitoring the trial of Obafemi Awolowo, didn't like the way he was being treated. And then these coupists wanted to take Awolowo and become the Prime Minister of Nigeria. Question now, Nigerians have not answered. Is it possible for Chief Obafemi Awolowo to be programmed to be the President of Nigeria or Prime Minister while he was in the University of Calabar without his knowledge or consent? Is it possible that Awolowo didn't know about that coup? It was that coup d'etat, a continuation or not a continuation of Awolowo's attempt to overthrow the government of Balewa in favor of a revolutionary government in Nigeria. I'm not saying it is so or it is not so, but the question is it possible for Chief Obafemi Awolowo not to know about a coup d'etat that was going to make him the Prime Minister, given the fact that Professor Aluko in the Department of Economics, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, then Dr. Aluko, was always visiting Chief Obafemi Awolowo. And then from Calabar, he would go to Ibadan. From Ibadan, he returns to Nsukka. And from Nsukka, goes back to Awolowo. Awolowo was totally abreast of what was going to happen or what was happening in Nigeria. At least he was not kept in the dark. And Okpara was always paying him through him, treating him as a dignified Nigerian that he deserved. So the question now is it possible that Chief Awo didn't have any knowledge of that coup? I'm not saying that he did or that he didn't, but I'm a social scientist and we deal with probabilities plus minus a certain margin of error. Then secondly, they say it's an Igbo coup because Ironsi did not punish Nzogu and the coupists. That is also a falsification of history. First of all, Ironsi breached the agreement with Nzogu. When Nzogu arrived from Kaduna to Lagos, he went and jailed him, pursued him with machine guns. That wasn't the agreement he reached with Nzogu. If Ironsi was part of that coup d'etat, why did he imprison Nzogu? Why didn't any of the coupists expose Ironsi's duplicity? And how could Ironsi have punished the coup when a committee has been set up to be the chairman of that committee to investigate about that coup d'etat, the people involved and the circumstances, after which, if the Supreme Military Council goes and approves the recommendations, a military tribunal or court martial will be set up. How could Ironsi have punished the coupists when the one had not submitted the report of the Supreme Military Council that said until now, Gohon has not submitted that report? Ironsi had not even executed Adakaboro, who was found guilty of treason. Therefore, those who are blaming Ironsi for not punishing the coupists simply know that they are not telling the truth, because there is no way Ironsi could have punished the coupists at that point in time when the ones reported not come out. When the Supreme Military Council had not gone through the report, even of that of Adakaboro. So then, that is on. So, a question of whether it is an Igbo coup, no, the Igbo had no hand in it. In fact, at the moment of that coup, why were there certain transfers in the army? The certain people in the army were reposted to several places. Were they done by the Igbo? So what I'm trying to say is that what Babangida said made no meaning. Those people who are saying that he read a wonderful book, it's not true, because there is nothing there that has not been known before, that the Igbo played no part except the military among them that played a part, not as Igbo, but as Nigerian people. People also have not come to the fact of the achievements of that revolution. Nobody likes killing.
Hello?
Nobody likes bloodshed. I'm coming, sir. I'm coming, sir. Nobody is approving of killing.
Yes, I can hear him. Go ahead.
Excuse, nobody is approving of killing. Hello, sir.
Go ahead. Just round up. I can hear you. Go ahead.
I'm rounding up. Nobody is approving of killing. Nobody is approving of bloodshed. The killing of Ahmadu Bello and his wife and so on. Nobody should approve of that. Neither anybody should approve of the killings in the West or in the Middle Belt. The question is now that when Babangida has said it's not an Igbo coup, and some people are saying that he said it was an Igbo coup, it was only a matter of interpretation. Yes, Nigeria is in a stage of reinterpreting histories, empirical situations. Now that Babangida has said it's not an Igbo coup, which means the military had known, rulers of Nigeria had known, it was not an Igbo coup. Igbo never conspired. And now, what are they to do now? They imposed economic blockade against the Igbo, closed the Igbo ports of Port Harcourt, Bonny and Opobo and eastern ports. Will they now lift the economic blockade now that they know it wasn't an Igbo coup?
Okay.
Will they now begin a process of compensating the Igbo, of apology, of erecting a memorial to say, Igbo, we are sorry. Okay. All these killings that are happening in Igbo land, Igbo youths are being arrested unfairly. Thousands of millions of Igbo people are in Asia, Asian jails. Is there a government in Nigeria that can now recall them? Can they now release Mazin Nambikano and say, okay, this thing you were saying, we've understood it. You've given feeling to the necessity for restructuring Nigeria for the benefit of everyone. Nigeria are ready to begin the process of rebuilding Nigeria. Now they know the Igbo people are not culpable. Will this collective punishment come to an end? So all this grammar we are speaking, somebody said that it wasn't that it was Babangida said it's not an Igbo, it's an Igbo and so on. But the main point is Babangida specifically said it was not an it wasn't an Igbo coup. So what is to be done now that we are right at this truth?
Hold on.
And I'm advising all Igbo people, they should stop this 10 trillion naira demand and all 1 trillion naira demand. Okay. What the Igbo now need is lifting the economic blockade of the East, re-triggering an Eastern pool of development.
Sorry.
Re-triggering it. and a regional form of government that gives the Igbo self-determination within one Nigeria.
Thank you very
so
much.
that the Igbo can,
Thank you.
the Igbo can develop on their own, Yoruba on their own, Hausa and so on their own within the same Nigeria.
Prof,
So now that we now know it's not an Igbo coup.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you for your intervention.
Thank you, sir.
Taking all the swoop in one go. But let me quickly hear Elder Delia Jufo. If you, now that we have speeded up and we are in these 10 trillion, that statement was issued by what many referred to as the faction of Ohanaeze. Obviously, that statement was not issued by the authentic Ohanaeze that had an election in Enugu, and Senator Azota, John Mbata, emerged as the President General of Ohanaeze in the Igbo. Now, the question is, when many people listen to or read that and listen to the other TV engagement on that, they will think the Igbo are demanding for 10 trillion. Listening to that and understanding that that is coming from a faction of Ohanaeze, what is your take?
Before we continue, okay, it is disingenuous to talk about factionalization in Ohanaeze. There is no faction in Ohanaeze. Those who are using Ohanaeze as instrument of enriching themselves are what my dear friend Professor Swago and I will call harlots of Jericho. I don't see how, after a rigorous election, I think it was on the 10th of January, to bring out a leader in Ohanaeze, some people will still be parading themselves as leaders of Ohanaeze. Let's call a spade a spade. You don't want us to go back to the history of the hatred of Igbo in Nigeria. It transcends what we are seeing. It's an inbuilt hatred born out of fear of the ingenuity of Igbo, dating back to the late 18th century, 19th century. Oswago mentioned the Haitian Revolution. Before the Haitian Revolution, there was the issue of Igbo landing, where Igbos refused to be enslaved in St. Simon Island. And I'm sure you know the history of that place. People who hitherto were willing to face the bullets that served some irresponsible slave masters had to be feared. And we come down to recent days. The problem we in Igbo have is not being able to tell the story by us. We have allowed people to tell our story for us. I don't see how many of us remember the exploits of Zik, the man called Zik of Africa. But we're not talking about Awolowo's exploits and his whatever they call it in Nigeria. We never accept that there's anything good about us. We see others as better. Otherwise, I don't see how anybody else. I call Arise after that, somebody in Arise, let me not say I call Arise, about that issue of, what do you call it, 10 trillion. I engaged him. I said, that 10 trillion, is it for my brothers who were killed in a little village in Ishiago in Delta State, where I come from? Or for the hundreds of thousands of people massacred in Asaba? Or for the 3 million people killed during the war? What is the 10 trillion for? And who is demanding? I'd like to know the name of the person demanding, because we don't have two Ohanezes. I sent a message to the president of Ohanaeze to address that issue. What will happen is that we should issue a statement that anything that does not come out from the Secretariat of Ohanaeze should not be listened to in this country. And that story must go around. If we allow everybody to wake up and say, I am Ohanaeze, I'm demanding 20 trillion. Yes, Nigerians will want to vilify Igbo. So the more that we allow this story to continue, the more vilification will suffer. So let us disabuse ourselves. And you too, Professor Mazi is okay. Don't even bring that story to your program. We do not have a faction of Ohaneze. We only have one Ohanaeze, and you know it.
Well, I may know it, a couple of others may know it, but Nigeria is a country that is populated by over 200 million people. Now, there are millions of Nigerians who do not understand the intrigues and intricacies as to the leadership within Ohanaeze. Therefore, things are not spoken about. What people would have the belief that they will be walking around is that Ndi Igbo are demanding. Someone actually had called me and said, now how can you people be demanding a mere 10 trillion? Do you understand? So if these things are not discussed, people would have that impression that through the cultural organization is demanding for 10 trillion. Anyway,
sir, I still sorry. Let me learn. I still go back to my issue of one side story. Nigerians are waiting for us to ridicule ourselves, and every slightest opportunity we have, they amplify it. As of today, there's somebody else before the death of Pa Adebanjo. The Yorubas are claiming some other Afenifere leadership under Fasoranti. I'm sure you know that, but you never see them in public. Why must we be the ones that bring ourselves this odium that allow people to
I think in fairness, during the election, we saw a visit by certain individuals that went to see Pa Fasoranti, and his endorsement after Pa Adebanjo late now endorsed Peter Obi. So, I mean, we all see that political parapoison, anyway. I mean, social-cultural parapoison that is given. However, in this case, you know, 4 years ago, more than 4. I mean, I'm coming to Professor Swagu now. Over 4 years ago, Professor Swagu, you contested to be the president of Ohanaeze and Igbo, President General of Ohanaeze and Igbo. In that election, he went the way he went, and you know, there was a faction then. But it appears, as an elder, there were things you people did in these election that happened on the 10th of January. Can you walk us through why Ndi Igbo or anybody should be surprised that after what the things you people did, there is still this nomenclature called faction? Where is it coming from?
Well, you see, like you said, I was old enough to fight the Civil War. In fact, my immediate younger brother fought the war too, like my elder brother. And when Ojukwu turned 70, I was honored with the invitation to deliver his 70th birthday lecture because he's one of those that thought I understood Biafra. I also understand Nigeria, and I understand Africa. I'm a Pan-Africanist. And what Nzogu and his group tried to avoid was a degenerate Nigeria like we have seen today. And a consequence of that is, with due respect to your own generation, you hear Professor Obi-Wan Kamas talking of a generation of inferior Igbo. And that is what is flooding Nigeria today. Those are regular Nigerians who just have to take advantage of the news, put their name forward, it doesn't matter in what direction, and make a living out of commissioning themselves with some bogus name and making brokers. And you see politicians that will be funding them to make brokers. But the difficulty for the Igbo is that the Igbo historically are held to a much higher moral standard. If you read Lugard's handover note to his successor, Governor Lang, he said these people are industrious and religious, though dangerous to be handed over and trusted with power because of their rebellious. But he said industrious and religious. He didn't say that of any other ethnic group or nation in Nigeria. Well, he didn't say it for the Haitians, the black people in Haiti, 1791, said it first, identified the Igbo, and attached the term great Igbo Grammon, the great Igbo nation, and identified what many Igbo don't know. Grand Igbo, a great Igbo spirit, that there is a spirit. Igbo is not the descendants of one ancestor called Igbo. They are believers in a spirit called Igbo. That is the spirit of proactive preemption, of freedom, of stopping problems before they arrive. Now, the generation of Nigerians of Igbo extraction we have now are like regular Nigerians. There is anarchy, there is chaos, and many of these young people just print certain things and make broadcasts, make announcements, claim to be round and round or forward all kinds of names, and make money out of it. That is the danger, and they don't care what happens to the masses of the people. You said around for Ohanaeze 2021, I did. And when I was asked to bring my CV to Abuja, I didn't go. And some of the factions asked me to come and be president under their faction. I said, no, it's not necessary. One of the governors at the time, now, who's a big minister now, would say, send his numbers for me to call. I didn't call him. I haven't called him till today because I'm hostile, self-respecting Igbo. The titles mean nothing. But to some of these young people who will evaluate 3 million Igbos for, I don't know how many Naira is that. What is Naira worth? I'll be feeling important, impressing little children and women and
what
others.
Prof, what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, is that these factionization, quote unquote.
No, there are no faction. They are just people, self-appointed people. And actually, you will see many groups that bring out their name, print a little card, and attach Ohanaeze to it.
Okay,
it will not stop.
In the street,
you find those who will do this with half an ifre, and you find those with nothing, this, and they are Nigerians. That's what's going on everywhere. But the Igbo are held to a higher moral standard.
Okay.
We can't ignore that fact.
Okay.
So that is the way I see that. And we shouldn't bother about it until we hear from President General Azuka Mbata and or the Secretary General Subeudu. We will know that Ohanaeze has presently constituted, has spoken. But as for family Ohanezes, they will exist. And we shouldn't be bothered by them. That's a Nigerian phenomenon.
Well, in as much as that is a Nigerian phenomenon, Prof, I'm still staying with you. Is there nothing that can be done to reduce, because the level of mayhem that some of the press releases causes to the image and to the, to the whole Igbo, sometimes it's unimaginable. Because, for instance, the reason why we're here and we are discussing about this 10 trillion demand, I mean, it's many people may not see this broadcast, many people may not see the clarification, then they've gone out with that notion that this is the stand of Igbo. Isn't that injurious? Isn't, what can be done? Is it not no way elders like you, maybe elders we may be within Ohanaeze, to call them, because no matter what, these are still Igbo sons. Can they be called to order to say, hey, young people, stop this and let us have one voice?
Can I comment
there? Well, that is done, but it's done privately.
Yeah.
In fact, I can say now that I made a note to the guy that made us and tell me you have become a functional nuisance to the Igbo nation. And stop there. You see the people just get excited without understanding things. It's like the Biafran question. There are people who are talking Biafra, Biafra. They can't distinguish the Igbo between Biafra. They don't know that Biafra is beyond the Igbo. That the Biafran Air Force was built around the Brown brothers of Bonny. That Dr. Leighton of Ogoni was the manufacturer of the explosives that made Ogbunigwe. They don't know this, but they conflate Igbo and the Biafran of confusion. That Biafra, in fact, like Babangida said, was declared because we needed a sanctuary, a refuge to defend ourselves. If not, we would have been wiped out. That the aim was not to create a Biafra as a geographical space. That's what Ojukwu have been saying. That's what it means. The Igbo created literary Pan-Africanism. The Igbo are Pan-Africanists. An Igbo man, Edward Blyden, was the first person that talked of Ethiopianism, which was the original name for Pan-Africanism. So, what the Igbo want is a free black man worldwide. You said the former ambassador of Haiti just spoke yesterday at Pan-African University in Abuja. We made arrangements. I coordinated that thing from here in Owerri. And that's what the Igbo, and he was talking of Pan-Africanism, of uniting the African peoples worldwide. That's what the Igbo believes. The Igbo created that movement, literally. And that's what we believe in. After the Biafra War, the first popular music in the Eastern region was Nkosi Nwam, which was lamenting about the Zulu child in South Africa who were being oppressed, and kinsmen were not intervening. That's how the Igbo mind works. Not when you see people who don't understand what Igbo are, what they stand for. There's a Biafra, blah, 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 blah. Ohanaeze, Ohanaeze, blah, 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 and they want just exhibitionism. They don't know that the Igbo cause is about world order.
Sure.
The place of the black man in the world. That's what Igbo stands for. Igbo can hold his own. And since the Igbo were suppressed, no other ethnic group in Nigeria has taken the place of the Igbo to lead the black man forward. What they have led now is to hand us to the Semites, to the bankers. And you have billions of hungry, begging households. People will not allow that.
Okay.
That's what Biafra is about. That's why the white man wants to suppress the Igbo. And Carlos of Jericho and local hyenas are celebrated. They don't know it is about them.
Okay. Let me, Elder Delia Jufo here. You wanted to intervene. When I asked this question, what can Ohanaeze do? What can the elders do? Because this is obviously becoming like a dance, a naked dance in the market square.
Let me give you a bit of history, Mazi, is okay. Professor Swagu, yes, indeed, in 2021, he did contest for leadership of Ohanaeze. And like everything else, political, we allowed external intervention in the election of, in quotes, of the leadership of Ohanaeze under Obiozor. We were not quite happy about it, some elders in Igbo land, and that gave birth to a group called Global Igbo Leaders, of which Osuagu is a member, I'm a member, and we sought to reconcile various aggrieved parties. It gave rise to a collegiate arrangement under the auspices of the bishops in Igbo land and traditional rulers. A meeting was called to resolve this matter. Obiozor, may his soul rest in peace, was invited on a number of occasions. He declined. Global Igbo leaders invited him to several meetings. He declined. We bore it until his death. He gave rise to the emergence of Emmanuel Iwanyanwu. he also died. Before then, the Deputy President General of Ohanaeze from Rivers State also died. And we don't see the hands of Igbo gods in the actions in Igbo land. So global Igbo leaders decided that enough is enough. Before the emergence of the next President General of Ohanaeze, let us go around and see how we can achieve peace and one Ohanaeze. When the leadership of Imo State, in quotes, brought Fidelis Ozuchukwu as the interim president of Ohanaeze, keep in mind, we had meetings with him, and he gave us assurance that everything will be done according to the books. And to his credit, he maintained that word, and he did well by Ndibo. Despite machinations to retain the leadership of Ohanaeze in Imo State, and I'm sure you're aware of it. To that extent, Professor Swago and I and a few people went to Port Harcourt to meet with various people to see how we can bring them into the fold to take their rightful place. I'm from Delta State. I knew the fight we had when it was the turn of Delta to bring about President General of Ohanaeze. People like Pat Tommy and a few of that fought for it. We did not ask for external forces to come and influence us. We demanded for it. It was our turn. So when we got to River State, those who are claiming to be factional, according to you, leaders of Ohanaeze today, we met with them. I'm telling you a story, so give me a few minutes. We met with them. They were very willing. We met at People's Club. Uchokuku, let me mention names, a very nice guy, and I like him very much. He was there. Jackson Omenazu was there, and a few other people. And they agreed that whoever emerged from River State will be supported by them. The election was to hold, I think, if I'm right, Friday, the 10th of January. The 10th of January was a Friday, if I'm right.
Yes.
By Monday, one of them broke out and declared himself President General of Ohanaeze. Ask that person, did he follow due process? Did he buy the form? There's a process of emerging as Ohanaeze President General. No matter what machinations are expected and that went through the process, you had to indicate interest in contesting for that position. And one of the prerequisites is that you must purchase a form. Let me mention names. Jackson Omenazu is claiming to be President General of Ohanaeze, making statements on behalf of Ohanaeze. Please, Nigerians, indeed, we should ask him, did he buy a form? Did he contest an election and found the process flawed? This is what the problem of Ndibo is. After the election, you asked Professor Swabu, what have we done after the election? I, Delia Jufo, I called Uchokuku. I spoke to him. He was very aggrieved. And I told him that Ndibo will come to Port Harcourt, where you live, and meet with you guys who are aggrieved and see how we can resolve the problem. To his credit, he gave me his word. And again, to his credit, he has remained quiet. I then called Jackson Omenazu. I told him the same thing, only for him to turn around a few days after to start making statements about being the President General of Ohanaeze. A little bird told me that he was working with a guy called Isiguzoro. I called Isiguzoro. I said, let us stop ridiculing ourselves in Igbo. I'm ashamed. At 80, I deserve to be an elder in Igbo land. We will say, okay, I'm one more. We cannot remain idle when a goat delivers on that tether. So we took it upon ourselves to see how we can galvanize these people. But if you are trying to make peace and somebody is intransigent and creating problems, where do you begin? So in answer to your question, yes, we have I spoke to Professor Swabu, I spoke to GIL, I spoke to the guy who became the President of Ohanaeze in River State, I said, call a meeting. We are ready to come to Rivers State to meet you guys to see how we can reconcile everything. But now it's becoming difficult because if letters and messages are coming out from Ohaneze that you call faction, what the Ohaneze General should do, President General, Ohanaeze is a franchise. If you use that name without authority, you are breaching the law.
Okay.
It's a registered organization. If you use it, you are liable to imprisonment. So
Okay.
the President General of Ohanaeze, I sent him a message yesterday, make it known that anybody who infringes that authority, that uses Ohanaeze Igbo to declare, to make a statement, is not speaking for Igbo and is going to face the wrath of the law. If we leave this thing, it will get out of hand.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Then I'm going to go back to, in the same question, staying in this trajectory here, in the same question, I'm going to pose that same question to Professor Basigwe. But before I do, Professor, I will say, after the last election that saw late Professor Obiozor as President General of Ohanaeze and Igbo, you were part of those that, quote unquote, belonged to a faction then. Obviously, as someone who, you know, I wouldn't say you have a factional experience before I'm misquoted, but as someone who had been at the other side, is there any idea you can give Ohanaeze today how they can handle these, you know? I mean, it's not really an issue, but, you know, as we say in Igbo, this thing, he had one come, ijiji bere n'ife dị nwa, ịpịa ya pịa, ịpịawa ya pịawa, ịrapụkwana ya, ọ na-enye discomfort. Professor, are you there?
Are you hearing me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you now. Go ahead, sir.
I'm appealing to this noble body. Let us leave the issue of Ohanaeze factionalization or not factionalization. Let us learn from the Yoruba. When Dele Farotimi and Afe Balolula were having issues, Yoruba people make behind and smoothing that thing out. Let us go. We have achieved enormous victory, but partial, in having Ohanaeze President General go not only to Rivers State, but to Ivocha, to the Kwere people. So let us smoothen things and make peace between them and line ourselves behind one man, preferably the person we are now talking about, and find a way to compensate the others and move the Igbo forward. So let us leave that as the main subject here. And what we should focus on is the title we've come here for. We've dismissed the issue of 10 trillion. It's an insult to the intelligence of the Igbo nation, to the intelligence of Nigerians. So that one is dismissed. Anybody doing that is doing himself and the Igbo nation a disservice. The subscript of this question today is righting historical wrongs or exploiting tragedy. That is what we should. We are appealing, in my own capacity as an Igbo man, an Igbo elder, we are appealing to the Yoruba nation. We are appealing to the Hausa Fulani, to all Nigerian nationalities, that now we knew already, and it has been reconfirmed that the Igbo never conspired to kill anybody, to do anything, that coup d'etat was in fact a coup d'etat of so many facts are still hit Nigerian rulers that it was not an Igbo coup. To have sponsored that coup. But let us end there. And we appeal to our fellow Nigerians. Now you've known it's not an Igbo coup. What shall we do? Shall we continue making the Igbo lick the ass and suffer for what they didn't know? Let us restore an eastern pole of development by lifting the blockade against the Igbo nation. Let our ports begin to function in Igbo, coastal ports and eastern ports. Let us release Nnamdi Kanu and his people. Let us repatriate the Igbos, millions of Igbos that were criminalized and chased away. Let us release the prisoners in Nigerian jails. Let us, this issue of orchestrated insecurity, Igbo boys, Igbo land is being depopulated. An Igbo boy with a SAG will be arrested. Sometimes police and army will arrest these people, take their phones, empty their accounts, and give them back. Many are being killed. 30 people were found to have in Abia State the other day. Dead people. A Black Panther, mass grave, besides a so-called cattle market. These are the issues we are appealing to Nigeria. That you are punishing Igbo for nothing. The coup that rescued the Yoruba from walloping and the Wetie. The coup that rescued the Middle Belt from genocide. Albeit after an unnecessary killing. Let us now focus on building a new Nigeria, of which the Igbo are ready and willing and prepared to be a useful part in this reconstruction process. Would they know? Let Gowon release. He was mandated by the Supreme Military Council to inquire upon the circumstances behind that coup, so that the Supreme Military Council will now know how to establish a military tribunal or a court martial to punish those who were found liable. Gowon has not released that report. How could Iran still go on punishing people when a report mandated to be procured had not been released? Did he even kill Adakaboro? Iran was following a process. We can give to the military, we can condemn the military in anything, but the one good thing in the military, military, is that they follow a methodology. Even though the reaction to any malfeasance is swift and harsh, but the same, they still follow a methodology. You cannot punish Zobu or anybody, except there is a reason attached to the punishment. Gowon has not released that report till today. The Igbo people that issue that happened that night, it was a state of confusion. People were crying for rescue. And nobody knew what was going to happen. Rumors of coup everywhere. People knew. Go to University of Ibadan in 1964, 65, 66. It was all rumor of coup everywhere in Nigeria. Nobody knew who was to make the coup also. Zik ran away. Zik had intelligence. Nobody is denying that. People in the army, they knew. Politicians knew that a coup might happen. It was rumor of coup right, left, and center until these boys moved and so on. They moved precipitately to preempt another coup that could have happened 2 days later, 17 January. That was why even the coup d'etat of January 15 was chaotic. It was hastily done. So we are not by this joining and saying, oh, killing is good. No. But all this Igbo coup, wrapped and brought to everybody. Now that it has ended, what should we now do? Should we now continue along the way of depopulating Igbo land and killing young Igbo people? And then blocking any economic reconstruction in Igbo land, should we go on doing that?
Prof, before I go on my last question, I want you to before I go on my last question, I want you to make this clarification. You have said this twice.
Yes, sir.
You keep referring to the Igbo port. Please, for the benefit of our viewers here, because this is a national discourse in this case, where do you make that reference? Because what I know is, the old Eastern Corridor, where we have the Eastern Port. In this case, because when we say Igbo port, before we are mistakenly accused as if you're going to go take over something from someone, the reason why I'm calling for this clarification is just like when Professor Swagu spoke. He spoke about people not understanding the sometimes misconstruing Biafra with Igbo. In this case, can we get the record straight when you talk about Igbo port, or do you mean Eastern port?
Very, very good. I mean both.
Okay.
The economic blockade, the blocking of Eastern port should be lifted from Burutu to Calabar, of which 3 of them are Igbo coastal ports. Port Harcourt, Iguacha, Obani, that is Bonny, and Opobo. I didn't miss words. I'm not claiming Ijaw ports. No, am I claiming Ogoni ports? The southern nationalities had their ports, each southern nationality corresponding, and these ports corresponded to the maritime traditions and the value they added in the population of the Americas. People talk of Haiti. Did Igbo go to Haiti by flying, by aircraft? Was it not through Bonny? Was it not through Iguacha and Bonny? Was there anybody blocking the Igbo using Bonny? Was it not the Igbo that opened Opobo? So why are Igbo timid? What is the history? Let me tell you direct answer. Bonny was opened by the Ndoki people. Alabariye, Okparandoli, and Okparasimini. Let me see anybody who can contradict this. That was opened by Bonny, by Igbo people. It was an Igbo man that opened Opobo.
Yeah,
let me see anybody that will contradict this. It was an Igbo that owned Iguacha. So we are not claiming anybody's territory. No. We want the East to be united. The Igbo people want the East to enjoy Igbo, Ogoni, Ibibio, Efik. But in case anybody refuses that unity, let the Bini have the Gelegele post, Ugoton, let the Ijaw have the Burutu, Akasa, Nembe, Brass Nembe, another post. Let the Ogoni have the One pot. Let the Aqua Cross have the Deep Sea post in Calabar, in Bakassi, and so on. All ethnic nationalities in the south. Let the Urobo have the Sapele pots, and so on. All ethnic nationalities had maritime traditions. The Igbo was a major factor in this maritime tradition and God forgive me history. So I'm not claiming anybody's territory. Sorry, at all. Igbo people are content with what God gave them. And I have mentioned people that found it where I'm not saying that others are not occupying any place. Should we now Igbo now claim Lagos ports because Igbo people are in the majority in some parts of Lagos? If Igbo people are majority in Kaduna, Sabongari, will then Igbo people claim that those places?
That's fine, Prof. That's
fine. I'm talking about those who opened a place, founded a place, developed the place, owned the place. I'm saying it was the Igbo that did so for Obani, that did so for Popo, that did so for Iguacha. So there is nothing confusing in what I'm saying. Okay. I'm not only saying be blocking the Igbo. I'm not saying lifting the economic blockade of the Igbo. I'm saying lifting the economic blockade against the East. That the Igbo want the East to be united as a strong economic and political bloc. Now that it's known that the Igbo committed no crime.
Okay, Prof. We are rounding up now. We are rounding up.
Okay,
Thank you very much for that clarification. I have
very clear.
Thank you.
Very unequivocal.
Exactly. I know the reason why it's not part of this conversation, but because you have said it twice before you are misconstrued, hence I sought for that clarification. Thank you very much for providing that clarification.
Thank you, sir.
Now, before we round up here, I appreciate the fact that three of you agreed to join this, as panelists here. Now, my last question, and this is also a reflection for all of us, is irrespective of who called for restitution to be paid, irrespective of how much was requested to be paid, I pose these questions to you, my elders and leaders. Should Ndi Igbo think and consider to demand for any form of restitution from the war program that eventually led to 1967 to 1970 and the life lost, including the Asaba massacre. Again, many people keep forgetting that Asaba in today's Delta State was in the Midwest and not in the Biafran territory. Yet, a terrible massacre occurred there. This question, let me start with Obueshi.
You see, I feel totally different from what my dear brother, Professor Bassi, is saying. Nigeria does not owe Igbo any obligation. If we have a saying in Igbo, where I come from, if you keep your cooking pot outside their house and it looks dirty, your neighbors will turn it into a dustbin. We have allowed ourselves to be turned into, I don't know what word to use without insulting the sensibilities of my dear tribe. We have allowed ourselves to be used as football by people who ordinarily, I grew up in Lagos long before the war, and I knew what control Igbo had in Lagos. It was after the war that most of the streets in Lagos began to change and named after Yoruba people. Yes, Igbos developed Lagos, whether you like it or not. In fact, there's a street in Surulere called Nobi. Yoruba did not change it because they thought it was Noibi, which is a word in this thing. So from that score, I don't think we should expect any largesse or gift from Nigeria, the Yoruba, the Hausa, the Fulanese. Our political leaders, whom I call, according to my brother Swago, harlots of Jericho, are the cause of our problem. Because they have sold our common patrimony, ancestry, to the less humans in this country. In my days growing up in the North, if you were being insulted, may God forbid, that an Hausa man should sleep with your mom, it was the greatest insult you can pass to an Igbo man. Today, we are running after them like sheep without shepherd. Until we get our leadership back on track, we are going to be wasting our time. Your leaders today, political leaders, are slaves to the so-called people who own Nigeria. Nobody owns Nigeria. We all own Nigeria. Okay. If we decide that we want to reclaim our community, we will. And the only way we can do it is to ensure that these criminals who are holding us hostage as politicians are held accountable.
Okay. Thank you very much, Oboshi. Professor Swago, again, let me recap that question again. Irrespective of who made demands, irrespective of the authority that person has, do you, in your considered opinion, think that at some point restitution should be demanded, or should we just, let it go and consider it in the past and move on?
Well, people have to solve a problem within the framework of their worldview. And within African worldview, the solutions to problems start with acknowledgement of what the problem is, and then reparation. Ewa is the same term you use in sewing cloth, in building house. It's ewa. It means you reconstruct, you repair. And after reparation, then reconciliation. But you see, at the end of the war, they talk of the three R's: reconstruction, rehabilitation, reconciliation, and all that, but they ignored it. That is why in some Igbo communities today, you will see, in the Eastern community, you will see schools and churches that were bombed, hospitals by Egyptian pilot driving some kind of European planes. So that reparation is on its own. And reparation for genocide is a standalone thing. Genocide is not something for pity or apologies or so. It's a standalone thing. is in fact something that involves not just humans, but the gods and everybody. And there has to be an accounting, a reparation involving Britain. That is the coordinator of all this. They cannot just stay alone and say it's Negroes killing each other. No, the records are there. That is what you have to, the way we approach it. There has to be acknowledgement and reparation. Then the process, it is for DBF part to determine what he needs for Ikwa. Isn't it? So assessment will be made by visionaries, those who see can assess, not by some kind of scoundrel, just talking something off its mouth, thinking with its mouth. Now, secondly, we have to acknowledge, I want to the Igbo to, and the Nigerian and the Black Red War to acknowledge that what is killing the problem against the Igbo, which has not disappeared, is about the position of the Black race in the world, which the Igbo have insisted from day one, must be acknowledged on equal pedestal with all humanity, recognizing that all humanity are equal. And those who feel they are superior people have targeted the Igbo and are using Halos of Jericho to let them into the Igbo destiny to destroy the Igbo and push everybody down. And they are not in a position, they have shown in the last 60, 70 years that they can replace the Igbo. Instead, they sell us to the plunderers. So we have to acknowledge that the issue is not really the Igbo. It's not the issue of Biafra. It's not the issue of Nigeria. It is that Nigerians, the area of the lower Niger, where Nigeria is located, happen to be the heartland of Homo sapiens sapiens. The essence of humanity. And those who are different and carry the gene or the beast of Cain think they must destroy these people and destroy the Black race. We must understand it. So the issue is not the Hausa, Yoruba, this thing, and the Fulani, of course, are battled against West Africa. The Igbo don't even have to care about them. West Africa is taking care of them. And they're not even, they don't have the leadership to take care of their people, to even show them where to go. So we must understand what the issues are. It is not about food. It's not about Hindi. It's not about Naira. Naira is what it's not about Naira. Whether 6 trillion or 42, it's not about Naira. It is about humanity. The humanity of the Black race.
Wow. Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, people, this is, we're coming to the end, but before we disperse, I have Professor Ejiofor here. Professor Ejiofor, I thought I saw Professor Ejiofor. He raised his hand anyway.
Yeah, he was. I think he said he has another meeting, but I don't know if it's gone.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to give him opportunity to say something because he raised his hand. Before we leave, obviously, once more to thank all of you for your time, and thank our viewers and listeners and those that joined this meeting for these, for your time, for these conversation to take place. Having said that, I would say, let me give us maybe 1 minute each to wrap up, understanding the topic that we are actually discussing here this evening. As we know, this topic that we just talked about came about as because of the press statement that was issued. Hence, the question is, the demand for restitution, is it righting historical wrongs or exploiting tragedy. From the conversation of the erudite panelists here this evening, it's apparently clear and very crystal in that manner, in that sense, that no one is actually looking at it, because it was Professor Basigwe that forcefully rejected that, saying that no one should be demanding for 10 trillion. Professor Osuagwu also made us understand that it is not about the monetary value, that there is something that is fundamental, which he anchored on worldview. And these are the things that should actually happen, not necessarily monetary things. One thing this conversation this evening has shown us is that it is whether the demand was, or the press release came from the right channel or it came from the wrong channel. Everybody here has a very clear idea on that the wrongs, the historical wrongs must be righted. The historical wrongs must be corrected. And in correcting these historical wrongs, obviously, as we have sat here for over an hour now, and interventions are made as to how that can happen. Like I said again, I thank you all for joining, and I'll give you all 1 minute each to, if you still have anything to say, that to wrap up. And I'll start with Professor Obasigwe. Professor, are you there? If you're still there, may you...
Yes, sir. Are you hearing me, sir?
Yes, we can.
Hello, sir. Are you hearing me, sir?
Yes, we can hear you. In 1 minute, please.
Hello, sir. 1 minute. I will not exceed 1 minute. Yes. I'm appealing to all Nigerians that now we know what has been known already. It be reiterated. The Igbo has never hurt or harmed Nigeria in any way. Let us return to regional government now in a better form. Yoruba region, Igbo region, Niger Delta region, all of them down to the coast, up across region. Then Hausa region to restore Hausa paramountcy in Hausa land. Middle belt, northeast. It's easier to develop the northeast through Igbo land than the circumlocution through Lagos. Let us decide now to build a new Nigeria. Release Nnamdi Kanu. Stop the orchestrated insecurity in the east. Let us for once. Awolowo, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, try to correct the mistakes of the past. He appointed an Igbo as his deputy in presidential race. He never condemned the 1960 coup d'etat. He never condemned the boys that undertook to make him prime minister. Let us learn from that sage. Let us learn from Zeke, all the people that carried Nigeria, that carried Nigeria on their head before us. Let us make a difference and start this enmity and this slaughtering of innocent souls. Let us build a new army, new institutions of society. The Igbo are ready to join in this race for human progress, provided other Nigerians are ready. Let us decide today and make... the Igbo nation does not harm anybody. Igbo people are businessmen, mostly. So let us exploit the advantages of scale that Nigeria offers. All we are looking for is leadership. Do we have the leadership today to do that? Igbo never plotted to overthrow anybody. The boys that did so had the best of intentions. The execution was flawed. We know that. Nobody wants killing. It's flawed, but let us learn from the past. Remember, you can start your history anywhere. We can start from 1966 history and say, oh, it is the cause of Nigerian problems. We can start from the treasonable felony, the census, the killings in the West, the killings in the Middle Belt, the killings in 1953, the killings in 1949, 1945, 1937, the jihad. We can start anywhere. Let us stop that game and start building a new Nigeria. That's the appeal of the Igbo nation to all Nigerians. We're all black people and everybody is watching us. Why should we be poor when Nigeria is rich? Igbo and East have contributed enormously to developing Nigeria. We will continue to do that in a peaceful way, not the robbery that is happening, destroying the wealth of the Niger Delta, the environment, and Igbo and so on. Let it happen in a peaceful way. The Igbo, the East, have created billionaires, multi-billionaires, richest greatest in Nigeria. Let this now, Revelation by Babangida, in his awful book. That book should not have been written, but albeit it has been written, let us learn from it and say thank you for each other for being a Nigerian. Let us for once be proud to be Nigerians. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your closing remark. Elder Delia Jufon,
I see the situation differently until we have, like Professor Baptist, until we have good leadership, we are not moving anywhere. So I'm going to urge Igbo to take their destiny in their hands. I have said it time without number. The insecurity in the East and to a large extent, Anyoma, because we have the same problem there, is perpetuated by people known to the authorities there. If we want to solve the problem of Alibo, we must get people who have the interest of Alibo at heart to become our political leaders. But because we have touts and harlots in the corridors of power, people of the North and the Southwest will always use them the way they use harlots. So it is in our hands to change the narrative if we want to. And until we do that, we will remain the scum of this country. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for that closing remark. And I come to you, Professor Chidi Osuagwu.
Okay, I want to remind us that General Babangida's book is a good contribution to the literature of the dynamics of malfunction in Nigeria. That Nigeria was created by the British as an informal part of British Empire and was disconfigured. The federation is normally created so that no component is bigger than the others combined and impose it with. But Britain deliberately configured Nigeria in such a way that there was a dominant knot to help Britain control Nigeria and maintain Nigeria as a new colony. And what I'm saying is documented in the classified British document on Nigeria decolonization, quote unquote, because they never decolonized Nigeria. And when they set up that booby trap, the usual suspect called the Igbo went and tripped it, like they tripped the revolution in Haiti, like they tripped what they call the American Civil War, with George Wallace, governor of Alabama, campaigning for president in America, 1968, accused the Igbo of hosting and campaigning that no relief should be sent to starving Biafra. So let us understand things within that more fundamental, broader context, and let Nigerians know. Listen to what Babangida has said. Obasanjo had said it. Many other documents have said it. The Igbo, by their culture, believe that the slaver is a slave. Therefore, the psychological incentive to enslave others is not there among the Igbo. And no history has shown that the Igbo has ever fought with any neighbor, such that the Willing Commission, only in the East, that the Willing Commission blamed the minorities for cheating, the Igbo and the Bibio. Not that the Igbo cheated others and documented that. But people, because our people don't read, they don't read to see this thing. So let us go and realize that holding Nigeria down is about holding the black race down. You hold Igbo down, you hold the black race down. You hold Igbo down, you hold Nigeria down. You hold Nigeria down, you hold the black race down. And that is what Anglosphere Europe, the Western world, that's what they want. And we must think about it. So dancing that the Igbos suffering and so on, when you are in fact suffering more, because Igbo can in fact compensate more than yourself. But now the solution is using the bogey of Igbo secession. You find power-hungry people trying to make unitary Nigeria and maintaining the Abubakar, Yadudu Abubakar Fulani Constitution, a document that called 1999 Constitution, which was crafted by Anwalu Yadudu, a Fulani man, and Abubakar, Absalom Abubakar, signed it, like Nyawodo have been telling us. And they say it's Constitution of Nigeria. It's not. We need to write a new constitution. We don't have one now.
Thank you, Prof.
Starting as a base, the one we agreed on, 1963, restore Nigeria to a regional balanced federation. There will be peace and people will be free. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. It's a very fine place to anchor this conversation this evening. It's been my pleasure to have you, Professor Chidi Osuagwu, historian and cultural scholar. Also here with us, Professor Obasi Igwe, political scientist and analyst, I believe joining us from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. And joining us from Lagos is also Elder Deli Ajufo, veteran public affairs commentator and analyst. Ndinwem, on this note, good night all, and may God bless us all. Bye for now.
Ndewo, Maazị. Ndewo.